Alright, before we even get into this, I need to warn you. This story? It's heavy. Like, really heavy. We're talking infidelity, we're talking betrayal, we're talking about someone making choices that blew up her entire life. So if that's not your thing, I get it, no judgment. But if you're staying, buckle up, because this one's gonna mess with your head a little bit. So let me tell you about Sienna. Sienna was 28 when all of this went down, and honestly, she was just tired. You know that kind of tired that sleep doesn't fix? That kind of tired that sits in your chest like a weight you can't shake off? Yeah, that was her. She'd been married to Derek for 4 years at that point. 4 years. And look, when they first got together, it was magic. I'm talking butterflies, late-night conversations that lasted until the sun came up, that kind of love where you can't keep your hands off each other. They got married young. She was 24, he was 27, and everyone said they were moving too fast, but they didn't care. They were in love, you know? That stupid, reckless, us against the world kind of love. But somewhere between year 2 and year 4, things changed. And I don't mean like one day everything was perfect and the next day it all fell apart. Nah, it was slower than that. More like death by 1,000 paper cuts. Little things. He stopped kissing her goodbye in the morning. She stopped bothering to tell him about her day because he'd just zone out anyway. Date nights turned into, let's just order in and watch TV nights, which turned into him falling asleep on the couch by 9 while she sat there scrolling through her phone, feeling like the loneliest person in the world. Derek worked in finance, some high-stress, high-stakes job that had him putting in 60, sometimes 70-hour weeks. And I get it. He was trying to build a future for them, trying to make sure they were financially stable, all that responsible adult stuff. But here's the thing. Sienna didn't need a bigger house or a fancier car. She needed her husband. She needed him to look at her the way he used to. She needed him to actually see her. Instead, she felt like a roommate. Like someone he shared a mortgage and a bed with, but nothing else. They'd go days without having a real conversation. And intimacy? Forget about it. I'm talking months, y'all. Months where he'd roll over and fall asleep before she even got into bed, or he'd be so exhausted from work that the idea of sex didn't even cross his mind. And Sienna? God, she tried. She really did. She'd put on lingerie and he'd barely notice. She'd cook his favorite meals and he'd eat them while scrolling through work emails on his phone. She'd try to talk to him about how she was feeling, how lonely she was, how disconnected they'd become. And he'd just say, I know, babe, things are crazy at work right now. It'll get better soon. Except it never did. So Sienna started to shrink, not just emotionally, but physically too. She stopped taking care of herself. She'd gained maybe 25 pounds over those 4 years. Comfort eating, stress eating, the whole deal. She stopped wearing makeup, stopped dressing up, stopped looking in the mirror because she didn't like what she saw staring back at her. She felt invisible, like she was just fading away. And the worst part? Derek didn't even notice. About 6 months before everything went to hell, Sienna made a decision. She joined a gym. Now, she wasn't one of those people who loved working out. She hated it, actually. But she needed something, some kind of outlet, some way to feel like she had control over at least one part of her life. So she signed up for this bougie little gym near her office, one of those places with the mood lighting and the motivational quotes on the walls and the protein shake bar in the lobby. Her first day there, she felt like a complete fraud. Everyone else looked like they knew what they were doing, and she was just standing there in old yoga pants and a baggy t-shirt, trying to figure out how the treadmill worked. And that's when she met Cade. Cade Rivers. God, even his name sounded like something out of a romance novel, right? He was one of the personal trainers there, mid-20s, maybe 26, with this easy confidence that made you feel like everything was going to be okay. He wasn't one of those meathead gym bros, you know? He was normal, approachable. He had this smile that made you feel like you were the only person in the room. He came up to her that first day while she was struggling with the settings on the elliptical, and he said, "First time here?" And Sienna, mortified, was like, "Is it that obvious?" He laughed, not in a mean way, but in this warm, genuine way, and said, "Nah, you're good. Everyone feels like that their first time. You want me to show you around?" She almost said no. She almost mumbled something about figuring it out herself and bolted for the door. But something in his voice, I don't know. It was kind, and she hadn't felt like anyone had been kind to her in so long. So she said yes. Cade spent the next 30 minutes walking her through the equipment, showing her proper form, asking her what her goals were. And here's the thing, he actually listened. Like, really listened. He remembered that she mentioned her lower back hurt sometimes, so he showed her stretches that could help. He remembered she said she was a morning person, so he suggested she book early sessions when the gym was quieter. Little things, details. And when she left that day, sweaty and exhausted and feeling like she might actually die, she was also smiling. For the first time in months, she felt like someone saw her. Someone cared. She went back 2 days later, then 3 days after that. Then it became a regular thing, 3 times a week, every week, and every time, Cade would check in on her. He'd ask how she was feeling, if the workouts were getting easier, if she needed to adjust anything. He made her laugh with stupid gym jokes. He celebrated her small wins, like when she finally made it through a full set of squats without wanting to collapse. He high-fived her like she'd just won a marathon. And Sienna, she started to feel like herself again, or maybe like a version of herself she'd forgotten existed. She started losing weight, started feeling stronger, both physically and mentally, started looking forward to something. But here's where it gets messy. Because somewhere in those 6 months, those training sessions stopped being just about fitness. Somewhere in those 6 months, Sienna started putting on makeup before the gym, started caring about what she wore, started checking her phone to see if Cade had texted her, because they'd exchanged numbers. For scheduling purposes, he'd said, and Sienna told herself it was innocent. She told herself she was allowed to have a friend. She told herself it didn't mean anything. But deep down, she knew exactly what was happening. She just didn't want to admit it yet. So here's where everything started to go sideways. It was their anniversary. 4 years. And Sienna had this whole thing planned, right? She made a reservation at this Italian place they went to on their first date, the one with the candlelit tables and the wine list that cost more than her car payment. She got her hair done, bought a new dress, the whole 9 yards. She was trying, trying to remind Derek of who they used to be, trying to save something that was slipping through her fingers. She texted him that morning. "Don't forget, 7 p.m. tonight, can't wait." He replied with a thumbs-up emoji, a thumbs up. That should have been her first clue. By 6:30, Sienna was dressed and ready, sitting on the couch watching the clock. By 7, she was calling him, straight to voicemail. By 7:15, she was pacing the living room, that sick feeling building in her stomach, the one where you already know what's coming but you're praying you're wrong. He finally called her back at 7:40. "Babe, I'm so sorry," he said, and she could hear the bustle of an office in the background. "Peterson needs this presentation done by tomorrow morning, and I'm the only one who can— It's our anniversary, Derek. I know, and I feel terrible, but this client is huge for us. I'll make it up to you this weekend, I promise. We'll do something nice." She wanted to scream. She wanted to throw the phone across the room. Instead, she just said, "Sure, yeah, this weekend." But they both knew this weekend would come and go, and he'd have another excuse, another meeting, another emergency. She hung up, sat there in that stupid expensive dress, and just broke. The next morning, she went to the gym. She didn't even want to work out. Her body felt heavy, her chest felt tight, like there was this weight pressing down on her lungs. But she went anyway because she didn't know what else to do. The session with Cade was a disaster. She couldn't focus, kept messing up the counts, nearly dropped a weight on her foot. He kept asking if she was okay, and she kept saying she was fine, but her voice was shaking and she knew he didn't believe her. When the session ended, she practically ran to her car. She sat there in the parking lot, gripping the steering wheel, and that's when it hit her. Not just the sadness, but the anger. The rage at feeling so damn invisible, at putting on a dress and waiting like an idiot for someone who couldn't even be bothered to show up, at spending 4 years trying to be enough for someone who clearly didn't care anymore. And she started crying. Not pretty crying, ugly crying, the kind where you can't breathe and your whole body's shaking and you don't even care who sees you, except someone did see her. There was a knock on her window, and she nearly jumped out of her skin. It was Cade, bent down, concern written all over his face. He made a little rolling motion with his hand, and she cracked the window. "Hey," he said softly. "You're not okay." "I'm fine," she lied, wiping at her face with the back of her hand. "Sienna, come on, talk to me." She shook her head, couldn't even get words out. "Look," he said, glancing at his watch. "My shift ends in 20 minutes. There's a diner around the corner. Mel's, you know the one? Meet me there. Just let me buy you a coffee or something. You shouldn't be alone right now." She should have said no. She should have thanked him and driven home and dealt with her mess of a marriage like an adult. But instead, she heard herself say, "Okay." 25 minutes later, she was sitting across from Cade in a cracked vinyl booth at Mel's 24-hour diner, hands wrapped around a mug of coffee she wasn't drinking. The place smelled like grease and old coffee grounds, and there was a flickering neon sign outside that kept buzzing. It was the opposite of romantic. But somehow, it felt safe. "So," Cade said, leaning back against the booth, "you gonna tell me what's going on? Or are we just gonna sit here in silence? Because I'm cool with either, honestly." She laughed, a broken, wet sound. "It's stupid." "I doubt that." And so she told him. About the anniversary. About Derek. About how she felt like she was drowning in her own life and no one even noticed. The words just poured out of her, and Cade sat there and listened, didn't interrupt, didn't try to fix it, just listened. When she finally stopped talking, he reached across the table and put his hand over hers. "That's not stupid," he said. "And you're not invisible, Sienna. I see you." Her heart did this weird flip thing in her chest, and she pulled her hand back, suddenly very aware of how close they were, how easy it would be to blur the lines. "I should go," she said, grabbing her purse. "Yeah," he said, but he didn't sound convinced. "Yeah, okay." She was halfway to her car when her phone buzzed. A text from Cade. "Just checking in. You good?" She stared at that message for a long time. She knew that responding was a bad idea, that this was the moment where she needed to draw a line, say thanks but no thanks, keep it professional. But she was so tired of being ignored, so tired of feeling like she didn't matter. So she texted back, "I will be. Thanks for tonight." His response came seconds later. "Anytime. I mean that." And just like that, the line was crossed. It wasn't trainer and client anymore. It was something else, something dangerous. And the worst part? She didn't want to stop. So after that night at the diner, things shifted. And I mean, it was subtle at first. So subtle that Sienna could almost pretend it wasn't happening. It started with the texts. The next morning, she woke up to a message from Cade. "Morning. Hope you slept better. Coffee on me next session?" Something about seeing his name on her screen first thing in the morning made her smile. Not just smile, grin like an idiot while lying in bed next to her husband who was already up and in the shower, getting ready for another 14-hour day. She texted back, "You don't have to do that. I want to." And that was it. That was the beginning. Pretty soon, they were texting every day. Good morning texts, midday check-ins, inside jokes about the gym regulars, like this one guy who grunted so loud during bench presses that everyone called him the Walrus. Stupid stuff, normal stuff, the kind of stuff you text a friend, except it didn't feel like friendship. Sienna started putting actual effort into her gym days. She'd wake up early, do her makeup, not gym makeup, like actual makeup. She'd pick out matching workout sets, the cute ones she'd bought but never wore because what was the point? She told herself she was doing it for herself, for her confidence. But deep down, she knew who she was doing it for. Cade noticed. Of course he noticed. "You're glowing today," he'd say during warm-ups, and she'd feel her cheeks flush. He started scheduling her sessions later in the evening, always his last client of the day. That way, when they finished, there was no rush. They'd sit on the gym mats afterward, stretching, talking, about everything, about nothing. He told her about his college football dreams that got derailed by a knee injury. She told him about her degree in graphic design that she'd given up when Derek's career took off. "You should get back into it," Cade said. "You're too talented to just let it go." The thing was, Derek had never once asked about her design work. Not in years. "We're just friends," she'd tell herself on the drive home, deleting their text thread just in case. "I'm allowed to have friends." Meanwhile, Derek didn't notice a damn thing. Not the weight she was losing, not the new clothes, not the fact that she was wearing mascara to the gym at 6 in the evening. He'd come home, kiss her on the forehead without really looking at her, and disappear into his laptop. One night, she actually tested him. She wore a dress she hadn't fit into in 2 years, did her hair, put on lipstick, all for dinner at home. He glanced up from his phone and said, "You look nice," then went back to scrolling. She wanted to scream. Instead, she texted Cade, "Do I even exist?" His response was instant. "You exist to me." It was around week 3 when things got physical. Not like that, not yet. But the air between them started to change. During assisted stretches, Cade's hands would linger on her legs a second too long. When he spotted her during squats, he'd stand so close she could feel the heat coming off his body. And the eye contact. Jesus, the eye contact. It was like he could see straight through her, and she couldn't look away even when every alarm bell in her head was screaming at her to stop. "You look beautiful today, Sienna," he said one evening, out of nowhere. Not "you're doing great" or "nice form," beautiful. Her mouth went dry. "Thanks," she managed. "I mean it. Derek's a lucky guy." The way he said Derek's name, like it tasted bitter, sent a shiver down her spine. That same week, Derek came home at 11 at night. 11. Sienna had been sitting on the couch waiting, dinner cold on the stove, and when he walked in, he didn't apologize, didn't explain, just microwaved a plate, ate standing up at the counter while scrolling through his phone, and passed out on the couch 20 minutes later. She stood there staring at him, this man she'd married, this stranger, and felt absolutely nothing. She went to their bedroom, closed the door, and before she could stop herself, she was texting Cade, "I don't think he even knows I'm here anymore." Her phone rang 5 seconds later. "Hey." Cade's voice came through, soft and concerned. "You okay?" "Yeah, Her voice cracked. "I needed to hear another human voice." "Where are you?" "In my car. In my driveway. I couldn't be in that house another second." They talked for 2 hours. About her marriage. About his last relationship that ended because she cheated on him. The irony wasn't lost on Sienna. About dreams and disappointments and how sometimes you wake up and realize you're living a life you don't recognize. "You deserve someone who actually sees you, Sienna," he said, his voice low. "Someone who makes you feel like you matter." Her heart was hammering against her ribs so hard she thought it might break through. "Cade, I know it's complicated. I had to say it." When she finally went inside, Derek was still asleep on the couch, mouth open, one arm hanging off the side. She stood there looking at him and felt the last thread of her loyalty start to fray. Leg day. God, she hated leg day. But this particular session left her completely wrecked, legs shaking, barely able to walk. Cade was laughing, not cruelly, just amused at how dramatic she was being. "I'm dying," she groaned, collapsing onto a bench. "You're not dying, you're getting stronger." "Same thing." He grabbed his water bottle, checked his watch. "Hey, I know this is random, but I'm starving and I know you skipped lunch. Want to grab food?" She should have said no. Every rational part of her brain was screaming no. "Sure," she said instead. "Yeah, let's do it." They went to this little Mexican place a few blocks away. Nothing fancy, just tacos and questionable margaritas. But sitting across from him in that booth, laughing about the guy at the gym who wore a weight belt for bicep curls, Sienna felt lighter than she had in years. Halfway through dinner, she was telling him about Derek missing yet another important thing, her mom's birthday dinner this time, and she felt her throat tighten. "I just feel invisible, you know?" she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Like I could disappear tomorrow and it would take him a week to notice." Cade reached across the table and took her hand. Just took it. His palm was warm, rough with calluses, and the touch sent electricity up her arm. "I know this is complicated," he said, his eyes locked on hers. "But I can't stop thinking about you, Sienna. I've tried. I can't." She should have pulled her hand away, should have made up an excuse and left. Instead, she squeezed his hand back. They sat there in his car afterward in the restaurant parking lot, neither of them willing to be the first to leave. The tension was suffocating, the good kind, the terrifying kind. He leaned in, and she leaned in, and for a second she could feel his breath on her lips. Then reality crashed in like a freight train. She pulled back, her hand flying to her mouth. "I can't. I'm married. I know," he said. But he didn't move away. "I know." She got out of the car, her whole body shaking, guilt crashing over her in waves. She sat in her own car for 10 minutes before she could even turn the key. But even through the guilt, all she could think about was how much she'd wanted to kiss him. Derek left for Singapore on a Tuesday. 10 days. Some huge deal that required him to be on site. "I'll miss you," he said at the airport, kissing her cheek distracted while checking his boarding pass. She smiled. "Miss you too." She didn't miss him, not even a little, and that terrified her. 3 days into his trip, Cade texted, "I got some new equipment at my place, home gym setup. Want to check it out? Way less crowded than the zoo we usually deal with." She stared at that text for a full 5 minutes. She knew what this was. She wasn't an idiot. This wasn't about gym equipment. She texted back, "What time?" When she showed up at his apartment that evening, wearing brand new leggings she'd bought that afternoon, her hair done, perfume on, he opened the door and just looked at her. Really looked at her. "Hi," she said, suddenly nervous. "Hi." He didn't even pretend to show her the gym equipment. They both knew why she was there. It happened on his couch, then his bedroom, then, in some burst of reckless energy, his kitchen. And the whole time Sienna felt like she was burning alive, with guilt, with desire, with the feeling of being wanted again after so long. When it was over, she lay there in his bed, his arm around her, staring at the ceiling. "I haven't felt this alive in years," she whispered. He kissed her forehead. "Neither have I." But underneath the euphoria, the guilt was already seeping in. What had she done? For 3 months, Sienna lived 2 completely separate lives, 3 training sessions a week that turned into 4-hour disappearances at Cade's apartment, elaborate lies about book club, girls' nights, extra boot camp classes that didn't exist. She became a master of deception, deleting texts the second she read them, always showering before going home, keeping her phone face down at all times. The thrill and the fear lived inside her in equal measure. Every time she left Cade's place, her hands would shake on the steering wheel. Every time Derek's name popped up on her phone, her stomach would drop. But she couldn't stop. The guilt was eating her alive, literally consuming her from the inside out. Some nights she'd lie awake next to Derek, staring at the ceiling, hating herself. But then Cade would text her good morning, and the guilt would fade just enough for her to keep going. She was falling in love with him. She knew it, and that was the most dangerous part. Because deep down, in that place she refused to look at too closely, she knew this couldn't last. She knew it was all going to blow up eventually. She just didn't know it would be so soon. It was a Thursday, a completely ordinary, unremarkable Thursday that destroyed everything. Sienna was in the shower, getting ready for another gym session, which really meant she'd spend 20 minutes pretending to work out and 3 hours at Cade's place. She'd left her phone charging on the kitchen counter, music playing through the speaker, steam fogging up the bathroom mirror. She didn't hear Derek come home early. He never came home early. Never. But some meeting got canceled, and for once, for the first goddamn time in months, he decided to surprise his wife. He walked into the kitchen, probably planning to order takeout or something romantic, and that's when he saw it. Her phone, face up on the counter. The screen lit up with a notification. From Cade. "Can't wait to see you tonight. Still thinking about Tuesday. Miss touching you." Sienna said later that she knew something was wrong the second she turned off the water. The music had stopped. The apartment was too quiet. That kind of quiet that makes your skin crawl, you know? She wrapped a towel around herself and walked out into the hallway. Derek was standing in the kitchen, holding her phone. His face was completely blank, not angry, not sad, just empty. And somehow that was worse than anything else. "Derek!" she started, but her voice died in her throat because she saw what he was holding. "Who the fuck is Cade?" His voice was so calm it was terrifying. Her heart stopped, just completely stopped. Her mouth opened but nothing came out. "Who the fuck is Cade?" He's my trainer." Derek looked down at the phone, scrolling now, his hand shaking. "Your trainer. Your trainer is texting you about Tuesday, about touching you, about missing you. Derek, let me explain." And that's when he exploded. He threw her phone across the room. It hit the wall and shattered, pieces of glass scattering across the floor. Sienna flinched, backing up against the wall. "How long?" he screamed. And she'd never heard him scream like that. Never. "How long have you been fucking him?" The words hit her like a physical blow, hearing it out loud, hearing the truth said in Derek's voice. 3 months, she whispered. She watched something break inside him. His face crumpled, and suddenly he wasn't angry anymore. He was destroyed. He staggered backward, grabbing onto the counter like his legs might give out. 3 months, he repeated, his voice cracking. 3 months you've been... While I've been working, trying to build a life for us, you've been... You haven't been building a life with me, she shouted back, and suddenly all the guilt transformed into rage. You've been building a life for yourself. When was the last time you asked me about my day? When was the last time you touched me, looked at me, gave a shit about anything I had to say? So that makes this okay? Derek's voice broke completely. He was crying now, tears streaming down his face. That makes it okay for you to go fuck some other guy? Instead of talking to me? Instead of trying to fix this? And God help her, Sienna didn't have an answer for that, because he was right. Did you love him? Derek asked, his voice barely a whisper now. She couldn't look at him. I don't know. Get out. His voice was hollow. What? Get out. He looked up at her, and the pain in his eyes was unbearable. Get out of my house, now. Derek, please, can we just... Now! Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely pack. She threw clothes into a bag, didn't even know what she was grabbing, while Derek sat on their bed, head in his hands, shoulders shaking with silent sobs. I'm sorry, she whispered as she zipped up the bag. I'm so sorry. He didn't respond, didn't even look at her. She walked out of that apartment, their life, and didn't look back. 20 minutes later, she was standing outside Cade's door, mascara running down her face, everything she owned shoved into a duffel bag. He opened the door in sweatpants and a t-shirt, clearly surprised to see her. Sienna, what are you... He knows, she said, her voice shaking. Derek knows about us. Everything. She watched his face change. Not concern, not relief, something else. Something that made her stomach drop. Wait, what? He knows? Like, he knows everything? Yes, Cade, he found your text. He kicked me out. She was crying again, couldn't stop. I didn't know where else to go. He ran a hand through his hair, stepping back from the door. Jesus. Okay, can I come in? Yeah, of course. But he didn't sound sure. She walked in, dropped her bag by the couch, that couch where this whole thing started, and turned to face him. I know this is crazy, she said, wiping at her face. I know this is so much, so fast, but maybe this is how it was supposed to happen. Maybe now we can actually be together. Really be together. Cade's face went pale. Sienna. And she knew. Right then, she knew. This was supposed to be just... He couldn't even finish the sentence. I mean, I didn't think you'd actually leave him. The room tilted. She felt like she might throw up. What? He was pacing now, avoiding her eyes. This was fun. We were having fun. The sneaking around, I liked you, I did, but I'm not really the relationship type, you know? I thought we were on the same page." "The same page?" Her voice was rising. "You told me I deserved better. You told me you couldn't stop thinking about me." "I know, and I meant it in the moment, but what, Cade? But you were just playing around? But you didn't think there would be consequences?" He looked at her then, and she saw it. The panic, the regret, the reality of what she'd done crashing down on both of them. "I'm sorry," he said weakly. "I never meant for it to go this far." She stood there, duffel bag at her feet, homeless, marriageless, staring at this man she thought she loved. This man she'd destroyed everything for. And he didn't want her. He never really wanted her. He'd wanted the affair, the excitement, the fantasy. But not her. Never her. "I need to go," she heard herself say. "Sienna, wait." But she was already grabbing her bag, already walking toward the door, her vision blurred with tears. She'd burned down her entire life for a man who thought they were just having fun. The door slammed behind her, and she stood in the hallway of his apartment building, completely and utterly alone. She'd lost everything, her husband, her home, her marriage, for nothing, for absolutely nothing. Sienna's sister Jade lived 40 minutes away in a one-bedroom apartment that barely fit one person, let alone two. But when Sienna called her that night, sobbing so hard she could barely get words out, Jade didn't ask questions. She just said, "Come here, now." Sienna showed up at 2 a.m. with her duffel bag and a face swollen from crying. Jade took one look at her and pulled her inside. "What happened?" And Sienna had to say it out loud, had to confess the whole ugly truth to her baby sister, the affair, the lies, Derek kicking her out, Cade not wanting her, all of it, every shameful, devastating detail. Jade didn't judge her, didn't say "I told you so," even though she'd warned Sienna months ago that her marriage was dying and she needed to do something about it. She just made tea, put blankets on the couch, and let Sienna cry herself to sleep. 2 weeks later, Sienna got the papers. Divorce papers, hand-delivered by a process server while she was helping Jade fold laundry. Derek wasn't messing around. He wanted out, and he wanted out fast. No mediation, no counseling, no second chances. He was done. She tried calling him, texted him, begged him to just talk to her, let her explain, let her apologize properly. He blocked her number. She quit the gym the next day, walked in, told the front desk she was canceling her membership, and walked out without looking back. She blocked Cade's number, deleted every message, every photo, tried to erase that entire part of her life like it never happened. But the hardest part? Telling everyone else. Her parents were devastated. Her mom cried, not because the marriage was over, but because Sienna had cheated. "We raised you better than this," she said, and those words cut deeper than anything Derek had said. Her friends. God, her friends were the worst. Half of them sided with Derek immediately. Girls she'd known since college stopped answering her calls. Group chats went silent. Invitations dried up. She became the cautionary tale, the girl who threw away a good man for some gym fling. The ones who stuck around didn't let her off easy either. "What were you thinking?" Her best friend Maya asked over coffee one afternoon. "You couldn't just talk to him? Go to therapy? You had to blow up your entire life?" And Sienna didn't have a good answer. Because Maya was right. 6 months later, Sienna was living in a studio apartment in a part of town she'd never lived in before. It was small, barely enough room for a bed and a kitchenette, but it was hers. She'd gotten a job doing freelance graphic design again, the thing she'd given up years ago. It wasn't much, but it was something. She went to therapy twice a week, sat in a beige office with a woman named Dr. Chen who didn't let her get away with anything. "You keep saying Derek ignored you," Dr. Chen said during one session, "but did you ever tell him how unhappy you were? Did you ever sit him down and say, 'This isn't working, we need help'?" Sienna opened her mouth to say yes, then closed it. Because the truth was, she hadn't. Not really. She'd dropped hints, made passive-aggressive comments, waited for him to magically read her mind and fix everything. But she'd never actually fought for her marriage. She'd just given up. and found someone else to make her feel better. The affair wasn't the problem, Sienna said slowly, the realization hitting her like a ton of bricks. It was my coward's way out. Instead of having one honest conversation with my husband, I blew everything up. Dr. Chen nodded. That's the work, recognizing that. Look, this story is getting insane, I know. If you're hooked and you're sticking with me, do me a quick favor and hit that like button and subscribe. It lets me know you're here, and trust me, you need to hear how this ends. Sienna still thinks about Derek sometimes, wonders if he's dating someone new, if he's happier, if he ever thinks about her. She heard through mutual friends that he's doing well, got a promotion, moved to a nicer place, seems lighter somehow. And Cade, she hasn't seen him since that night. Doesn't want to. That chapter is closed, locked, and buried. The thing Sienna had to learn the hard way, and I mean the really, really hard way, is that no one can make you feel whole except yourself. Not your husband, not your trainer, not some fantasy relationship that exists only in your head. She'd spent so long waiting for Derek to make her happy, to make her feel seen, that she'd forgotten she had a voice. She could have spoken up, could have demanded couples therapy, could have said, "We're dying here and I need you to fight for us." Instead, she'd taken the easy way out, the cowardly way. She'd found someone who gave her attention and let that be enough. Let it destroy everything she'd built. If you're unhappy, Dr. Chen told her once, you owe it to everyone, especially yourself, to speak up, to try, to get counseling. Have the hard conversations, do everything you possibly can before you make a choice you can't take back. And that's the brutal truth Sienna learned too late. She didn't lose Derek because he was a bad husband. She lost him because she was a bad wife. Because when things got hard, she ran, she lied. She betrayed the one person who'd promised to build a life with her. And for what? For a guy who never even loved her back, who saw her as a fun distraction, nothing more. These days, Sienna's learning to be alone, learning to like herself again. It's slow. Some days are better than others. Some days she wakes up and the guilt is so heavy she can barely breathe. But she's trying. She's rebuilding. One therapy session, one freelance project, one day at a time. And if there's anything she wants you to take away from this mess of a story, it's this. Don't be her. Don't let your relationship die in silence. Don't wait for someone else to save you. And for the love of God, don't throw away something real for something that was never real to begin with. Because once you burn it all down, you can't unburn it. You can't take it back, and you'll spend the rest of your life living with the ashes. And that's the story. It wasn't easy to tell, but I want to know what you think. What would you have done if you were in Sienna's shoes? Have you ever been through anything like this? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. I'm reading every single one.